We heard a little bit about CEEQUAL, and now we're going to hear a lot more. So Ian Nicholson, who's director of the BRE in the UK and CEEQUAL, will describe how the world of carbon fits into CEEQUAL and what the future plans are. So over to you, Ian.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thank you to Paul, the Construction Climate Challenge, for the invitation to come and speak. So my role in BRE is Director of CEEQUAL and Infrastructure, so I'm leading that certification scheme. What am I going to do in the next 10 minutes? Well, I'm not actually going to talk too much about CEEQUAL generally, because I don't have time. My brief was very much to talk about how we're going to deal with carbon in the forthcoming new version, CEEQUAL 2018. So I'm going to give the briefest of brief introductions to CEEQUAL. If you want to know more, then please come and either talk to myself, my colleague Chris Broadbent, who is somewhere in the audience, just over there, or equally go to one of the stands out in the Winter Garden. There's a CEEQUAL banner stand there, and talk to either Katerina or Sophie or Anna out there, and they can tell you as well about CEEQUAL more generally. So let's move on. So what is CEEQUAL? It is the sustainability rating scheme for infrastructure. So we have schemes like BREEAM and LEED for buildings. Well, CEEQUAL is the infrastructure civil engineering equivalent. It was originally developed in the early 2000s by the Institution of Civil Engineers in the UK. And it's grown into 7 countries around the world since then, and in 2015 was actually acquired by BRE to bring it into the overall BREEAM family of standards to create alignment and clear direction for industry. And from the infrastructure perspective, it is a world first. So in 2004, when it was launched, it was the only sustainability rating scheme for infrastructure in the world. And today it remains the leading international scheme for infrastructure. So what is it? It's a rating system and an award. It's an influencing tool that really is designed to incentivize civil engineering project teams to improve sustainability through best practice. It's very holistic. It's not just about carbon. It covers all aspects of sustainability. It's a team-based self-assessment, so the trained assessors work with the project teams to do that influencing to improve the decision-making. The rigor for the award comes through evidence-based. You have to demonstrate through project documentation what you've actually achieved. And then we appoint one of our independent verifiers to review that evidence to give the rigor for the award. So since 2015, we've been working on how we align the CEEQUAL methodology and the BREEAM infrastructure methodology. The commitment was that we were going to bring together the best of both into a single infrastructure rating scheme. What does that mean in practice? It means we're maintaining the CEEQUAL process. Infrastructure is very varied, and CEEQUAL has developed an approach to take standardization to the wide range of infrastructure that is out there. So the whole scoping, verification, and award types will remain. But what we're trying to do is bring more rigor to the assessment through the BREEAM style approach of criteria. We're going to introduce more metrics so that we can start to baseline better as an industry and understand what performance looks like. But equally, we want to maintain the flexibility of application. And that's where there's a real challenge in the work we are doing at the moment, bringing those two those methodologies together. So in terms of timelines, we rebranded and told the world at the beginning of this year that the scheme was going to remain as CEEQUAL. So CEEQUAL is the infrastructure sustainability brand. We launched a pre-registration process, so those projects using new civil engineering projects can now get early access to the strategic stage criteria of the new scheme. So those projects that are going on into the mid-20s and beyond can start to utilise some of the early thinking that we've got. We'll be coming out to public consultation in early 2019 with a view to launching it in the spring of 2019. So now I'm going to move on and talk about how we intend to deal with carbon in the new version. And I think there's 4 key aspects which I'm going to talk through. And fundamentally, it's about applying the principles and the framework that PAS 2080 is defining. So we talked about PAS 2080 earlier, but using the CEEQUAL framework of incentivization to really push practice, push performance, push carbon reduction. So, key caveat to everything I'm going to say is the criteria are still in draft. So what I'm talking about here is our intentions around carbon management in the next version. Any comments, questions, thoughts about what I say, please come and talk to us during the networking sessions. So, first of all, approach. This is the real core piece. This is the firm foundation. It will be LCA based, with the most reward coming for those organisations that do a full life cycle assessment. If you're only able to do a carbon footprint, then there will still be reward for that. It will be whole life based, so cradle to grave. And to bring some rigour into this, conducted by an appropriate professional, so that we try and get some consistency to our approach. That approach is great. That gives us the firm foundation for measurement, but then there are 3 other key elements that are really going to drive the performance. First of all is leadership. And what we want to be seeing here is how corporate carbon reduction policies get embedded into projects. Okay, so not just fine words on corporate websites, practice in projects. We want to see that across the whole value chain. So not just clients, but consultants, contractors, manufacturers, suppliers doing it as well. And we want to be looking for proactive leadership. So not all clients are ready and in a position to drive that leadership at the moment. So let's see other members of the value chain trying to drive that leadership as well and give some proactive support to those clients in what can be done. And finally, in leadership, collaboration, absolutely key. Everybody in the value chain in a project working together to understand how they can drive carbon reduction. So that's about 2-way dialogue. So manufacturers, suppliers have great ideas, great concepts. How often do they talk to designers about what their concepts are so that designers can be taking those innovations and starting to think about them in their designs? Comes back to proactive leadership that I was talking about. Baselines and targets. You can only measure reduction, as we've been hearing, from a good, rigorous, clear baseline. We have a challenge in an industry as general around data availability and rigour of that to get firm baselines. So we want to take the industry on a journey in this version to start to build data so that we can then create baselines and ultimately get to the goal of a whole life science-based target for carbon reduction. That won't be in this version, that will be a little bit further down the line. But we intend rewarding project teams that can set really clear, realistic baselines, and then that can go on and set stretching targets from that baseline. And then finally, innovation. We're going to put we're intending to put some credits into the next version that will reward those project teams that can show leading edge, exemplary practice. Okay, that means really pushing the boundaries, and that might be about a really stretching carbon neutral strategy. Maybe you've been able to set a strategy and some targets that align to the Paris 2-degree or 1.5-degree scenarios. Exemplary performance and practices is what we would be looking for in here. And it's down to the teams to demonstrate the compelling case of what we've done. So we're not going to set the criteria around those credits. The team are going to have to demonstrate to us what it is they've really achieved to deserve those credits. So those are the 4 aspects of how we intend to use CEEQUAL to try and drive carbon reduction going forward. So that's everything for now. The only last thing I just want to close on is to say, do come and join us at 4:30 out in the Winter Garden. My colleague Chris Broadbent is going to be celebrating the success of 2 projects with 2 CEEQUAL award presentations. So don't forget, please come and join us at 4:30. Thank you very much.
Brilliant.